They didn't even let me log out. One moment I was adjusting the header on the firm's biggest proposal of the year, and the next, two men from HR walked into my glass-walled office and quietly shut the door. "We're sorry, Isla. There's been a restructuring." My stomach dropped. "No warning? No notice?" I asked, voice low, trying to keep my dignity from cracking. One of them, Doug, shifted in his chair. He couldn't even look me in the eye. "It's not performance-related. The leadership team made the decision late last night. Your position's been eliminated." "Eliminated?" I repeated. "What about the Hamilton account? I was just leading that pitch." "It's being redistributed," the other one said. No answers, just rehearsed lines and vague nods. They slid a thin white envelope across the table. 2-month severance. We'd like you to collect your belongings by noon." I was stunned, numb, but I knew better than to make a scene. Damon Riker had orchestrated this. He was the one who signed off on everything now. The new CEO, the visionary leader who wore tailored suits and used words like elevate and synergy without blinking. Everyone was afraid of him, even the board. I'd seen him 2 days ago at the espresso bar. He smiled at me like nothing was coming. "Looking sharp, Isla," he said, in that polished voice. I had no idea then that I was already on his kill list. They escorted me to my desk like I was dangerous. No eye contact from coworkers. Just the glow of monitors and uncomfortable silence. My security badge stopped working before I made it to the elevator. When I stepped outside onto the New York sidewalk, I didn't cry. I stood there, holding the envelope in my hand, feeling the weight of something worse than unemployment, betrayal, because I knew exactly why I'd been fired, and it had nothing to do with restructuring. 3 weeks ago, I stayed late prepping an executive deck. Damon had left his office abruptly. For a call, his phone still open on the desk. I wasn't trying to snoop, but when I went to drop off a folder, the screen lit up. "Can't wait to see you tonight." Last night was the sender's name, C. I scrolled, just once, just enough to see photos, hotel bookings under an alias, and one chilling voice memo. "We need to be careful. Isla's sharp. If she finds out, it's over." He knew I'd seen enough, and now he was covering his tracks the only way he knew how, by erasing me. I went home to my apartment in Queens and sat at the edge of my bed, still in the same dress I wore to lead the Hamilton pitch. I opened the IF severance packet, legal threats, silence clauses. They'd even added a sentence warning me not to engage in external commentary regarding internal affairs. I laughed bitterly. That's when my phone rang. Vivian Cole, my godmother. Damon's wife. The woman who used to tie my hair in a silk ribbon before school. The woman who bought me my first winter coat when my mom couldn't afford one. The woman I hadn't spoken to in months. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was calm, precise. "I heard what he did," she said. My chest tightened. "Vivian, I didn't mean to get involved." But she interrupted me. "Isla, did you see the messages?" Silence, then, "Yes." There was a long pause. Then she said, like a blade slicing through velvet, "Good, because I'm done pretending." I hadn't been in Vivian Cole's home since I was 18. Back then, it had felt like stepping into another universe, marble floors that echoed like a museum, fresh lilies in every room, a closet bigger than my mother's entire apartment. Now, 10 years later, the grandeur was the same, but it felt colder. Like something underneath the perfection had cracked. Vivian greeted me at the door herself. No staff, no heels. Just black flats, a beige sweater, and her hair swept into a knot that said, "I've been waiting." We didn't hug. She just looked at me and said, "Come in. Let's kill him." I froze. "You knew?" I whispered. She nodded once, slowly. "Not everything, but enough. I've had women call me in the middle of the night, crying, apologizing. He always found the clever ones. Her voice was razor-sharp beneath the calm. He's good at one thing, making the woman look crazy. My throat tightened. I didn't mean to get dragged into this, I said. Vivian poured 2 glasses of wine and sat on the sofa. You weren't dragged. You were pushed. And you didn't fall. You stood up. She slid a folder across the coffee table. Inside, financial statements. Travel logs, printouts of text messages, surveillance photos, everything I had seen, and more. You've been collecting this? For 6 months, she said. Why not go public? She looked me in the eye. Because I didn't want a scandal. I wanted a funeral. The next morning we began. Not with fire, with silence. Vivian had a name in every room that mattered. Women in PR firms, lawyers, interior designers who heard everything from their clients and said nothing. She'd spent years curating her network like fine art. Now, she was turning it into a weapon. I want to ruin his power, not just his marriage, she said. I want him to feel what it's like to be erased. My role? I had access to the firm's old communications archives stored in off-site drives the new regime had ignored. I still had friends in low places. The IT guys, the baristas who heard office gossip, the personal assistants who got their hands dirty while executives smiled for the cameras. Damon had moved fast to fire me, but he'd forgotten how deep I'd rooted myself. We started with the timeline. We identified every woman he'd manipulated. 5 employees, 2 interns, 1 vendor, each dismissed with vague reasons. Culture misalignment, departmental changes, personal misconduct, all women, all silenced. I reached out to them carefully. One by one. Not all responded. One cursed me out. Another cried when I said Vivian's name, but 3 agreed to talk. We met in secret. In bookstores, in cafes, in a yoga studio locker, room that smelled of eucalyptus and betrayal. One had a voice memo of Damon threatening her career. Another had an NDA with terms so aggressive, it bordered on blackmail. The third, Emily, had screenshots. Time-stamped messages, hotel receipts, a pregnancy scare. Damon told her to take care of quietly. My hands shook as I scrolled. Vivian was quiet when I showed her. File it all, she said. This isn't personal anymore. It's structural. That? Week, Vivian began reappearing in social spaces. Subtle at first. Art gallery openings, nonprofit brunches, fundraisers where the wives whispered and the husbands pretended not to see. She didn't mention Damon once. Instead, she talked about legacy, women's equity in leadership, privacy protection in corporate culture, and she watched who squirmed. She was brilliant at it. She didn't raise her voice. She raised doubt. Meanwhile, Damon spiraled, publicly and privately. He made a surprise appearance at a firm-wide happy hour. Visibly drunk, trying to prove everything was business as usual. He gave a speech that didn't land. Employees exchanged glances. People were starting to whisper. That was when we launched Phase 2. Vivian made a quiet call to the founder, her ex-husband Damon's former mentor, who had retired abroad. He hadn't spoken publicly in over a year. But when Vivian explained what was happening, he agreed to reactivate a dormant clause in the trust that backed the firm. The clause gave Vivian temporary fiduciary oversight in the event of a leadership scandal. Damon had no idea. We chose the gala for the reveal, the annual Design for Tomorrow gala. Black tie, champagne towers, press everywhere. Vivian sponsored the evening. Damon thought it was her peace offering. It was the trap. The night before the gala, we rehearsed the speech. We timed the screen cues. We checked the backup drives twice. Maya, my tech-savvy friend from my freelance days, rigged the projection controls. Everything was ready. And the moment Vivian stepped on stage, wearing navy silk and the coldest smile I'd ever seen, I knew what was coming would be legendary. The sky over Manhattan was dark velvet, stitched with the glow of skyscraper lights and the occasional glint of a drone camera circling the gala venue. Inside the historic Colton Ballroom, everything sparkled. Cascading floral centerpieces, gold-rimmed glassware, hushed laughter echoing under domed ceilings. The theme was Design for Tomorrow. What none of them knew was that tomorrow was going to arrive about 3 hours early and burn the foundation they were standing on. Vivian Cole entered the ballroom with the poise of royalty. Her gown was a structured navy silk column, custom-made, with a sharp neckline and not a single piece of jewelry. Her presence alone was enough. Heads turned, women whispered, men blinked too long. The photographers instinctively turned toward her. Damon Riker watched her from the bar, drink in hand, jaw clenched. He hadn't spoken to her in days. Not since. His team caught wind of a compliance inquiry Vivian had initiated through an old trust clause. But he didn't know how far it had gone. He still thought he was ahead. That's what made the next hour so satisfying. Maya was already in the control booth, disguised in a black event crew jumpsuit with a lanyard clipped low. Isla was nearby, dressed as a vendor's assistant, moving through the service doors like she'd done it 100 times. No one noticed her. That was the point. Everything was in place. On cue, the string quartet faded into a light instrumental loop as the evening host approached the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our platinum sponsor and longtime supporter of Colton Design Collective, Ms. Vivian Cole. Polite applause. Then silence. Vivian took the stage, but instead of delivering the polished speech that had been emailed to the teleprompter crew the day before, she pulled a folded piece of paper from her clutch and looked out over the crowd. Tonight's theme is the future, she said smoothly. And the future, like all structures, needs truth as its foundation. Which is why I'd like to deviate from the planned remarks and talk about the cost of silence. A hush fell over the ballroom. Damon froze. Vivian nodded slightly. Her signal to Maya, and the screens lit up. At first, it looked like a typical slideshow. Corporate graphics, words like leadership integrity and workplace ethics. Then the emails began, unredacted, time-stamped. Screenshots of Damon's messages to see, explicit, arrogant, damning. Then came the photos, hotel receipts, Uber drop-offs, an expense report labeled Client Hospitality with a personal payment to a luxury spa in Montauk. Gasps rippled through the room. Vivian kept speaking, measured, calm. Leadership isn't about charisma or control. It's about accountability. And for months now, our firm has been led by someone who has not only abused his power, but systematically dismantled the dignity of the women who trusted him. A pause. Then the voice memo. Damon's voice played through the ballroom speakers. She's nosy, smart but soft. Fire her before she finds the rest. We'll frame it as performance. My voice, I was the she. The crowd turned. Phones were already up. People were recording, live streaming. Damon stepped forward, face white, lips parted like he wanted to object, but Vivian's voice cut sharper. I'm activating my rights under Clause 8 of the Founding Trust, she said, pulling out a signed statement. Effective immediately, Damon Riker is suspended from his duties as CEO. Pending a formal board review, all executive functions will be overseen by an interim ethics committee. She handed the papers to a man at the edge of the stage. The room was in shock. Damon muttered something, then shoved past a waiter and disappeared through the side exit, followed by one of his stunned assistants. He was done. But Vivian wasn't. She looked directly at the crowd. I didn't do this alone, she said. I did it with someone who believed that being silent is no longer an act of dignity, but of complicity. She gestured to the back, and slowly, Isla stepped forward. Every eye turned to her. The fired strategist, the woman who'd vanished from the firm weeks earlier, now back, standing in heels and red lipstick with a calm so fierce it made people sit up straighter. I was fired because I knew, Isla said into the mic, because I saw what he tried to hide, and I refused to pretend. A beat, she looked down, then back up, and for every woman who's been dismissed, who's been erased, who's been told to stay quiet to protect a man's reputation, this was for you. Applause didn't come all at once. It began in pockets, then rose, then filled the entire room. Outside, paparazzi swarmed the curb. News vans had already arrived. By morning, the story was everywhere. CEO ousted at charity gala. After affair and abuse allegations revealed by wife and whistleblower, Vivian Cole reclaims power. Architect of her husband's fall, her goddaughter. Inside, Vivian and Isla stood quietly in the green room, sipping water from crystal glasses. You didn't have to call me out, Isla said softly. Didn't have to raise you either, Vivian replied with a rare smile. But I saw something in you then. And tonight, everyone else did too. The morning after the gala, I woke up to my phone vibrating against my nightstand like a warning. 17 missed calls, dozens of texts, emails with subject lines that ranged from, "Are you okay?" to, "You're trending." I blinked against. The morning light rolled out of bed and turned on the TV. There it was. Disgraced CEO exposed by wife and goddaughter in explosive gala speech. Damon Riker's fall, affair, firings, and allegations of internal misconduct. Meet Isla Hart, the quiet strategist who lit the fuse. My face was everywhere, from grainy stills of me standing beside Vivian to slow-motion clips where I said, I was fired because I knew. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. It felt like exposure, like the war had shifted battlefields, and now I was the one standing in the center of the scope. Vivian called first. They're painting you as the rebel, she said, voice calm but tight. The brave little assistant who helped me do the dirty work. I wasn't your assistant, I said bitterly. I know. But they don't care. That's not the story that sells. We both knew the narrative was already mutating. Some media outlets called me heroic, others hinted at ambition, suggested I leaked the affair to elevate my profile, and a few outright accused me of being Damon's jilted lover. I stared at a headline that read, "From fired to famous, was Isla Hart ever really a victim?" My stomach turned. The world had a way of distorting even the cleanest justice. Meanwhile, Damon was quiet, but not gone. By day 3, rumors surfaced that he was assembling a legal team, a big one, and he was suing the firm for wrongful termination, reputational damage, and breach of fiduciary protocol. He hadn't denied the affair. He hadn't denied the expenses. But he claimed we'd used illegally obtained information and that Vivian had acted out of emotional vengeance with no board authority. The firm's leadership scrambled, investors panicked, and I became collateral. That week, I was followed twice. Once by a man in a gray hat who trailed me down 59th Street. Once by a woman in sunglasses at my gym who left the moment I went to the locker room. I started getting emails from burner addresses. One simply said, "You think you're safe because the wife has money. She's not the one we want." I didn't tell Vivian. Not yet. Because I was starting to realize something else. This wasn't just about Damon's affair. It was about the people behind him. The silent partners, the investors, the ones who had enabled him and were now watching. Their empires tremble. He was their fall guy, and I had messed with their foundation. Vivian arranged a meeting with the board's legal counsel. The man was slick, smiling too much, said all the right things. "We want to protect you, Isla. We appreciate your courage. We just need to clarify how you accessed certain files for protocol. I saw through it instantly. They weren't trying to protect me. They were scanning me to see if I could be made into a liability. I answered carefully, showed no fear, told them I was fully prepared to cooperate, but also reminded them of the voice memo where Damon planned my firing and slandered me by name. They backed off. For now. That night, I went to Vivian's brownstone. She looked tired. Her hair was up, but not perfectly. Her makeup faintly smudged. The silk of her robe wasn't steamed. "Why didn't you tell me about the lawsuit?" I asked. She handed me a glass of wine. "Because I wanted one night where you still felt like the hero." I sat down. "What happens if he wins?" "He won't," she said, "because we're going to win first." She pulled out a USB. "This is everything," she said. "The trust clause, the audit approvals, the board emails from 6 weeks ago where they signed off on my oversight." I stared. "You kept receipts?" She smiled faintly. "I raised you, didn't I?" Over the next few days, we worked in silence. We organized statements. We prepped legal defenses. Vivian leaked just enough of Damon's travel logs to a journalist who'd been sniffing at the right doors. He ran a story titled, "Behind Closed Doors: How Damon Riker Used His CEO Status to Silence Whistleblowers." It spread fast. By day 10, his lawsuit lost oxygen. The investors distanced themselves. His own attorney dropped him, and finally, he disappeared from the headlines. But not from my life. Not entirely. He sent one last message, a handwritten envelope, no return address. Inside, a photo of me and Vivian from years ago, when I was 17, standing beside her at a summer gala. She was glowing. I looked like a ghost. On the back, in all caps, one sentence: "You think you won." I stared at it for a long time. And then, I lit it on fire. The letter was supposed to be the end, a pathetic attempt at intimidation. One last bitter gesture from a man who'd already lost. But what I didn't realize then, what neither Vivian nor I could have guessed, was that the letter was a warning. Not just a threat. A distraction. Because Damon hadn't just left behind scandal. He'd left behind something far worse. It started with a voicemail. Vivian played it for me late one evening, her voice low, posture tight as a coiled spring. The message came from her private banker at a firm in Geneva. "Ms. Cole, we received a flagged inquiry from a Cayman subsidiary under your name. It's tied to a dormant shell company, but it moved $4.3 million last month." Vivian froze. "I've never moved anything," she whispered, "but the company was hers. At least on paper. And the money, pulled from one of Westbridge's overseas consulting budgets, routed through Nova Edge Limited, a now-defunct partner company Damon had pitched during his first quarter. He'd planted it in her name, a financial time bomb, set to detonate only if he lost everything. We moved fast. Maya helped. Us trace the digital trail. IPs, transfer logs, fake invoices. It was all there. Damon had created the shell company under Vivian's name 6 months before the gala. He used old board contacts to forge her digital signature. If that money stayed where it was, Vivian would be linked to international laundering and embezzlement. If it moved again, she'd be implicated directly. We had 48 hours to intercept the next transfer. And one shot to prove Vivian had nothing to do with it. Vivian wanted to handle it quietly. Call in a high-powered attorney. Clean it surgically. But I disagreed. "He tried to burn you down slowly," I said. "We don't put out fires quietly. Not anymore." So we turned to the one person neither of us wanted to involve. The founder, Vivian's ex-husband. The man who built the firm with her, then left when things got too complicated. He was now retired in Barcelona, drinking espresso on balconies and pretending his empire hadn't just been through hell. Vivian sent him a one-line message. Damon planted fake shell accounts under my name. I need your voice to clear this. He called an hour later, and, to our surprise, he agreed. The next day, he issued a formal public statement. He confirmed the trust clause that had given Vivienne oversight, declared Damon's actions as self-serving manipulation, and admitted that Damon had access to confidential founder credentials that he abused to forge internal permissions, including Vivienne's. Within minutes, a second investigation was opened, and suddenly, the final lie collapsed. But Damon didn't disappear quietly. That night, Vivienne's apartment was broken into. No valuables taken. No drawers ransacked. Just one thing missing: a private envelope Vivienne had kept for years. Inside had been a copy of the founder's original shareholder agreement, one Damon had always been desperate to see. Why? Because it contained a buried clause, one that named Isla Hart as a future stakeholder. Me. Not by request. By trust. Vivienne had quietly arranged for me to receive 5% ownership in the firm if I remained in good professional standing and retained approval of the founder. A gift I hadn't even known I was owed. But Damon had found out and tried to erase it before it became legally binding. We filed a theft report, but no one touched Damon. Not yet. The authorities needed one more piece, so we gave it to them. Maya. Dug deeper into Nova Edge, found a time-stamped access log that matched the night of the money transfer. The IP was traced to a luxury hotel suite, booked under a corporate alias. Security footage showed Damon, alone, laptop open, logged into Vivienne's offshore trust account. The proof was undeniable. 3 days later, Damon Riker was arrested at a private airstrip trying to board a plane to Morocco, charged with fraud, forgery, misappropriation of investor funds, attempted financial framing, violation of corporate fiduciary law. The media swarmed. From CEO to fugitive, the downfall of Damon Riker. Vivienne Cole and Isla Hart clear their names after stolen millions discovered. And just like that, he was over. The board reconvened the next week. Vivienne declined the permanent CEO role again. Instead, she nominated a woman named Evelyn Dow, former head of operations, a quiet powerhouse who had once been sidelined by Damon. Evelyn accepted. Her first order of business? A new executive ethics charter co-written by me. I didn't return to the firm. I didn't need to. Because now, I owned part of it, officially, silently, powerfully. On the day the shareholder documents were finalized, Vivienne and I sat on the rooftop of her townhouse. It was spring. The city felt cleaner somehow. You know, she said, swirling her wine, you were never meant to stay invisible. I wasn't trying to be seen, I replied. Just respected. She smiled. Then mission accomplished. We toasted. And in that quiet moment, I realized something. Damon didn't lose because he cheated. He lost because he underestimated two women who knew how to burn the whole game down, without ever raising their voices.